It's time. It's time to open your eyes. It's time to open your mind. It's time to grow up and face reality. It's time to lock and load because it's MeatTrapper time. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode number 245 of MeatTrapper Radio. It's hard to go wrong with a number like 45. One of my favorite numbers. But we've got a lot to talk about tonight. A lot of news and a lot of topics in the news as well. So the first thing that I was planning on starting out with was an announcement that Volume 2 of Walk with the Wild Man was available. I had gotten my shipment in yesterday. The shipment came in about 4 p.m., and by 11 o'clock last night, it was completely sold out. I could not believe the overwhelming demand. It's a great book. So it is the first shipment has completely gone. I have another shipment hopefully coming in, say, 10 days to 2 weeks, but we'll see. This is a great book, and like I say, it's self-published by Wildman on a printed by cash basis, and that's the thing that you have to understand when you get into this type of material is it's not going to be picked up by any big publishing house, and they're not going to publish thousands of copies of it. It's this is all got to be done basically on a batch by batch basis, prepaid upfront in cash. So I will keep everybody updated as to when the next shipment comes in, and we will do the best we can. But just to give you a little glimpse into the actual man behind the book, had an interesting thing come up when my shipment came in. I was contacted, and basically what happens is Wildman writes the entire book out by hand with pen and paper, and then he has someone type it up, get it book ready and everything, get it ready for the printer. Well, after it was printed and my shipment had arrived, evidently there was a typo on page 8 of this new volume. And he's a bit of a perfectionist, you might say, and so he was kind of upset that there was a typo that had gotten out, and he wanted me to send the entire shipment back at his expense, and then he was going to have the books reprinted without the typo and then sent back. And of course, by the time I got that communication, 90% of the shipment that I had received had already been sold. And I just, my position is nobody's going to really care about a typo on a book like this. The information is so solid, and it's so what I call it's educational and it's entertaining as well. Because, for instance, there was one story in the book that he was relaying about when they were out doing some coon hunting, and how he would scale the tree. Like if they got in a den tree or something, the dogs would bay up at the den tree, and he would actually climb the tree when he was younger and shoot the coons and get them out of the den. That's kind of a different way to do it, But the thing that I always stress is that it's not only entertaining but educational, because he was talking about his pistol of choice for that was a Ruger Single 6. And one of the things with a revolver like that is you can shoot various types of ammunition in the same cylinder. So you can shoot CB caps, you can shoot 22 shorts, you can shoot 22 longs, or what have you. Whereas if you're using a 22 automatic like the Mark II that I use as my trapline gun, you can't shoot shorts through it. If you do, you have to load them in the chamber one at a time. They're not going to cycle the action. and you can't really mix and match ammunition. So, there's always little tidbits like that running throughout the book. But anyway, the shipment is in the mail, and hopefully the United States Postal Service will do their part and actually get everybody the books that they have ordered. Because we even had one go to Norway and one go to Canada out of this. But we're going to talk about some, let's see, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about trap theft and avoiding some trap theft. We're going to talk about how Sleepy Creek number 2s are no longer available, and what my thoughts are on options for that. Because if you're a Patreon member and you've watched the Resistance Trapping video series over there, you know that the Sleepy Creek number 2 long spring is my end of the world trap, and you'll know why. But we're going to talk about something a little different up front here on the public side. And the first thing I want to mention is I'm probably going to start disabling comments on the public YouTube version of the broadcast, and it's simply because I'm not doing this to debate liberals. I'm not doing this to play little word games or little cutesy gotcha games with people that want to seize on one sentence that I say and then try and disprove the entire point of the broadcast. For people like that, if that's all you've got to do, if that's the best that you can come up with, what you need to do is you need to get your own channel, you need to make your own podcast, and you need to go state your own views on your own time. I simply, I don't care what you think. If you're that kind of person, I don't care what you think, and you're not worth responding to. And you know what? You're not going to come crap up my channel. It's that simple. And if you don't like it, unsubscribe and adios. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. So, moving right along, let's see, whatever we're going to do, we're going to talk about raising kids, some of the difficulties that our generation has with that, and a couple other things. So anyway, the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that the communists have indeed won, and they are now gloating about it. And I want to explain, and any of you fuddy-duddies and any of you liberals and any of you communists and lefties out there, you may be giddy at the fact that you have won. But I want you to know that by winning, you have lost. And you have lost not just for us, but for yourself. And I'm going to explain exactly why your victory is so self-destructive. Now, most of you liberals and most of you communists, if you bother to listen to this, you're too stupid to understand this. But it's the truth. And the first way that I'm going to illustrate this is I'm going to talk about this when it comes to children. Now, most of us that have raised kids, and most of the people raising kids these days are actually conservatives, because your communists are either avoiding having kids, which is why they have to control the school systems and they have to brainwash your children because they're not having children. They're choosing to not have children so that they can save their money, they can avoid all of that stress, they can avoid all of that expense, and they can quote unquote enjoy their lives and enjoy their money. But they have to continue by brainwashing your kids. If they don't have kids of their own, they're going to take yours and they're going to ruin yours because they're selfish. And so the first thing you have to understand when raising kids is that somebody has to be the adult, right? The parents have to be the adult, because the kids are focused on what they want right here, right now. They're focused on the present. A little kid, when he sees a toy, how many times have you been in the store? You've got your toddler, you've got your, 6-year-old or whatever, your 8-year-old, and they see a toy on the shelf and they want it. They want it right now. And if they don't get it, what do? They pitch a fit, right? And they'll scream, they'll squawk, they'll do anything they can to get that toy because that's what they want right here, right now. But you have to be the adult and you have to say no. And, then you come to realize that you can't reason with the child. You can't say, well, the reason that I'm not giving you this toy is because we can't buy every toy that we see because there's only so much money and you really don't need that toy and et cetera, et cetera. You don't reason with the child. You're the adult. They're the child, and you know better, and they can't have that toy every time they see it, so you say no. And, of course, it usually ends up when they get a little older into the because I said so, which, that infuriates them even more. But you're over it. You say no. And it's the same way, say, with food. What do kids want? They want sweets. They want candy. If you left it up to a kid would eat candy or whatever they wanted for breakfast, lunch, and supper. And you as an adult, you know better than that. You know that ultimately, long term, that's destructive for the child. So you can't allow the child to eat candy for breakfast and candy for lunch and candy for supper. You have to feed them a well-balanced meal. You have to make sure that they eat right. Because if you don't, then the child is going to be malnourished. He's going to grow up. He's not going to have a balanced diet. He's not going to develop properly. And all of that. Same way with bedtime. How many parents, have gone through the fight over the bedtime? It's bedtime. Kid doesn't want to go to bed. Why not? Because the kid is looking at what they want right here, right now. They want to stay up and they want to play with their toy. They don't want to go into that dark room. They don't want to be quiet. They don't want to lay down, even though that's what's best for them. And as the parent, you know what's best for them, that they get a good night's sleep. Because if they don't get a good night's sleep, they're going to be cranky and all of that in the morning, and then things just aren't going to go well. So in other words, the child is focused on what they want right here, right now, without any regard for the future consequences of their decisions and their actions. The next thing is the child is looking to you to make that happen. The child wants to control you. The child wants to bend you to its will so that you do what the child says and what the child wants. But if you do, then it doesn't work out well in the long term. Sure, in the short term, they get the shiny new toy. In the short term, they get candy for breakfast. In the short term, they don't have a bedtime and they don't have to go to bed. But in the long term, they turn out to be a spoiled, rotten, malnourished, underdeveloped, ill-tempered brat. They turn out to be an unsuccessful person. Now, is any of this ringing a bell? When you take a look at the communists running the country today, and I'm not just talking about the Antifa, green-haired, purple-nosed, split-eared freaks. I'm not just talking about the morbidly obese Black Lives Matter activists that have to have everything their way, that insist that, say her name. Say her name. I mean, how childish is that? Say her name. That's going to fix everything, just like getting the toy off the shelf is going to fix everything for right now. But in the long term, it does nothing. But on a bigger level, we it's not just these loser, low IQ freaks that are running around the urban paradises in our country. Those are minor annoyances. The much bigger picture are the diehard communists that are running our country now, that are controlling the media. They're controlling the military. Yes, the military. They're controlling the federal law enforcement agencies. They're controlling the government. They're controlling the courts. They're controlling the school systems. These people may not consider themselves to be communists, but that's exactly what they are. Now, there's a guy named Cenk Uygur, and you probably are not familiar with him, but he's a diehard, hardcore leftist. He's basically a communist, and he has a show. It's called The Young Turks, and he was recently talking about how, quote unquote, they've won. And it was interesting because he's absolutely right. I agree with him 100,000%. And what Cenk was saying was, he said, when you see the Trump supporters and you see the conservatives being anti-military, when you see them being anti-FBI, when you see them being anti-media and anti-school, he said, that means we've won those areas because they're against it. We've won. And he's absolutely right. Because you see, now the whole paradigm has flipped. Now the conservatives are anti-government. The conservatives are anti-law enforcement. The conservatives are anti-military. Now you may not be to that point yet. If not, it's simply because you haven't internalized reality to a full degree. I mean, Special Operations Command has just hired an uber liberal that compared Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler to be their diversity and inclusion manager. And so this is a civilian leftist that is now going to be responsible for making sure that Special Operations Command has the right mix of minorities and other people, to make sure that they are inclusive and diverse. Because you see, meritocracy is no longer important in a war-fighting ability. So yes, the liberals have won. The communists have won. They control the military, the government. They control law enforcement. They control the schools, the courts. So they've won. They're the children who've gotten the toy. They've gotten the toy that they saw on the shelf. They've gotten the candy for breakfast, and they no longer have a bedtime. They have won. But as we all know, it's not going to end up well. Yes, they control it all, and they're going to run it into the ground. They're going to convert this country into modern-day Venezuela. Yeah, you're going to have free health care, and it's going to suck. You're going to have a very diverse and inclusive military where it doesn't matter if you're a transgender, it doesn't matter if you're female, it doesn't matter. You can be a special operations warrior. Doesn't matter. And the ultimate result of that is you're not going to have the best person in the best position, and the Russians and the Chinese that aren't playing this crap are going to kick our asses. Same way with law enforcement. You're going to have understanding and diverse community policing type law enforcement agencies, and you're going to end up like Oakland, where unless it's basically a felony, they simply are not going to respond. In Oakland, if somebody comes out and steals your car or something, you just go and file a report, and if they happen to find it, they happen to find it. They don't even come out to take a report on anything like that anymore. So that's the result of winning. You can look at San Francisco, where they have to pay people to clean up human excrement off the street. Because they're not going to be judgmental about anything. That's winning. And what's the result? Nobody wants to go there. So yes, the liberals have won. And the thing is now, if you look at certain areas of the country, like areas in California and other areas like New York, you'll see people are leaving. In other words, these communists have implemented their utopian paradise in these places, and then it becomes an unlivable hellhole, and they have to leave. That's what happens when they win, and they're too stupid to look at the end results of their policies in these areas and realize that that's what's going to happen nationwide. And I'll leave it to you to figure out, as a result, if you live in an area that's not contaminated yet, that's still normal, that's still functional, what your response to these people should be when they show up. Now, along the same vein, because it's basically an extension of the I want what I want right now, regardless mentality, which permeates liberal communist thinking. And that is, look at what's happening with our money supply, with the printing of money that is absolutely out of control. You know, we just had 1.9 trillion in stimulus money printed up, and everybody got their free little stimmy money so they can run off to the tattoo parlor or whatever they want to do and have a free tattoo or something. Or maybe a big screen TV. But really, it's a serious issue, because what's happening, not only is inflation boiling under the surface and about to explode, but you have a distortion in global economics as a direct result of the United States' massive money printing. And I want to give you just one example, because you could talk for hours on this. But one of the things that's happening is that global trade and shipping rates are skyrocketing, specifically with containers. Now, containers, like a 40-foot container unit, they have different sizes, but basically they sit on these big container ships, and normally what happens is the containers are filled up with plastic Walmart treasures and electronics and stuff from China, and they're sent over to the west coast of the United States, say Long Beach or someplace like that, and the containers are offloaded off of the ship, and they're put on either trains or on the back of 18-wheelers, and they're driven to the local Walmart where we can have all of the cheap salad shooters and everything else that we need. We can have all of the cheap made in China American flags, so we can show our patriotism, and it's all very cheap. And then the container, you see, once that container is emptied, the container goes back to the port to go back to China. Now, normally in the past, that container would be filled up with stuff that we were sending back to China, say pork or different things like that. And then the container would go back, and the Chinese would offload the stuff they're getting from us, and then the process would repeat. Well, with the explosion of stimmy money, of free money, of funny money, of fake money, an interesting distortion is taking place. And that is, Americans are buying so much imported crap that the containers are now being rushed immediately back to China empty, rather than sitting there waiting on some American goods to be filled up. Because it used to be, it made no sense to send a container back empty, because you got to pay for the container to be transported back to China. You at least want something in it, right? You at least want to be charging some freight money on the way back. Now they charge freight on the way over, and there's so much freight backed up in China that it's cheaper to rush the container immediately back to China, load it back up, and ship it back over, unload it, send it back empty, and keep repeating that. There is so much stuff coming over now that the cost of shipping a container has exploded. It's unbelievable. I think now and don't quote me on this, but I think the last rate that I read was that a 40-foot container was now costing $8,000 to ship it over from China. And it used to be in the neighborhood of $2,000 per 40-foot container. So you see, the point is as a result, it's the unintended consequence. It's the missed long-term consequences like we were talking about earlier. And that by printing all of this money and telling people to go out and boost the economy, that they've actually created a distortion in the economic trade that's causing shipping container rates to skyrocket. And when transportation costs go up, the cost of the end unit, the end product in the store goes up accordingly. So you can see how that inflation cycle is self-perpetuating. And it all comes back to the fact that there's no adults left in this country. Everybody has to be a child. Everybody has to be safe. Everybody wants what they want right now. Give me my money. Give me my money. Where's my free money? I want my $2,000. Do you think it's going to get better? Once you have given in to a child, once you've given him the toy in Walmart, when he's screaming for the toy, and you give it to him just to shut him up, what happens the next time he sees a toy that he wants? He's going to keep screaming. He's going to scream even louder because he's been taught that if he screams, he gets his way. If he pitches a fit, he gets his way. So once you start handing out this free money, once you start hiring all of the diversity officers, once you start firing all the evil white guys, once everybody on the commie side gets their way, do you think there's any possibility that any time in the future they're going to be told, no, you're not getting your way this time? Of course not. It's going to multiply. It's going to accelerate. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill. It picks up speed and it gets bigger and it gets bigger till finally it hits the bottom and it's all over. And we are just getting going. So if you were a Patreon member, please stay tuned. And if you're not, maybe you want to check out becoming a Patreon member and supporting this broadcast and becoming a member of our tribe. It's truly a stellar group of people. You can go to patreon.com/MeatTrapper and get all signed up. There's a lot of stuff over there, man. There's more bonus content and more content over there than you can probably consume in a year. And then we also have our invitation-only Telegram channel, which is a great success, man. You're talking about 24/7, sort of a campfire BS rant session where a lot of good information is exchanged. But great guys over there. I wish I had more time to hang out on it, but I really don't. So anyway, if you're a member, stay tuned. We got a lot to talk about on the back end, and if not, we'll see you next time.